Hello world, it's Lee Kelson coming to you again from the Sunshine Coast Innovation Centre, and I have with me Leanne Kemp, the CEO of Everledger, and our newly appointed Queensland Chief Entrepreneur. Leanne,
so
welcome.
Rumours have it. So rumours have it.
I have it on good authority. So I was at the breakfast event that you did this morning, and just want to say to you that it was fantastic to hear some of the views that you have and hopefully some of the insights that you're bringing into the ecosystem. But I guess one of the things that came out of it for me was the idea of community. I mean, you mentioned community a couple of times, and I wanted to ask you, what does community mean to you?
Community means to me a series of people that can come together with like-mindedness, that clearly share the same passion and enthusiasm, and can actually work collectively in a similar environment. Like, I'm standing here in this building, and I've just come from a series of pitch sessions in there, and to be honest with you, this place is like a sleeping giant. There's incredible businesses and entrepreneurs and startups, and beyond that, actually, there's companies here that already have global reach. I'm a bit shell-shocked actually by what I've just walked out of. It's
amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So I've been going around the Sunshine Coast for the last couple of months interviewing entrepreneurs and getting entrepreneur stories for Invest Sunshine Coast. And I'm like you, I'm just blown away with the stories and the international, global reach of some of these companies that they're operating out of here. But I mean, it's fantastic to see. But I think just going back to the community thing, I want to talk about how important to you is diversity in those communities.
I mean, diversity creates genius, right? It creates innovation from my perspective. And I think that community, in one respect, the ability to be able to share ideas and do it in a sort of safe space, emotionally and contractually, is really important for innovation. And it's very clear that through the journey of entrepreneurship or innovation, you're always in an environment where you're faced with uncertainty around the idea or the technology that you're working with. And communities that come together in such a way to be able to bring the diversity of thought and really sort of challenge maybe even some of the entrepreneurial thinking that's in the space, but do it in such a way that is safe to understand that penultimately the journey is one that is a shared pathway. And so I think the collective mind that can come together across communities is an incredibly important secret ingredient to making a place like the Sunshine Coast so special. To be able to then operationalise and execute out of these communities is also the kind of the next stage that I'm seeing.
Yeah. So you mentioned this morning also that you started Everledger out of a train with some goats bleeding in the background.
True story.
That's a true story.
Yep, bought it on eBay actually. Woke up the next morning after a hangover and it said, "You've won a train." Wow, really? Awesome.
But I think the thing that I took out of that was that what I see, my observation in a lot of places, but Australia is, first thing we think about as innovation is we've got to build a shrine to innovation. So we've got to go and put infrastructure and build a place and build a building, right? But you can do it from anywhere now, right?
I think you should deliberately put yourself in an environment that doesn't necessarily sit within a construct of tradition, because that puts you in a place of uncertainty, and your mind then begins to think it through the creative process, and to allow yourself to be free in that thought process is really where certain genius times come together. And I was talking today, we have incredible locations in Australia that I'm quite sure, we go to seek out sort of solidarity moments in mountains and do, moments of to find, the inner soul. And that same kind of process to a certain extent is what happens in innovation. So I created something inside of my train at 3:00 in the morning, listening to,
inside of your train,
goats bleeding in the background. I'm quite sure they were hungry, or they were probably thinking, "Well, you turn the light off, we're trying to sleep too." But it was that sort of quietness of mind that ended up being able to sort of give birth to something that was truly unique.
So the circle economy, I just want to touch on that. They're giving me the wind up, but the circle economy...
They're rough here. They're rough.
They are. But I want to ask you about that, because I think that's fantastic, and the idea that the circle economy and bringing into the design of products and...
Yeah, I mean, it's a race to the bottom. So we've built our entire sort of population on consumerism, and which is fine, right? So we have to live, breathe, and experience certain parts of quality of life. But the reality is we have not really thought about the full circle of product. And if we start thinking about it's being really a race to the bottom, let's go bigger, better, faster, or get it cheaper and made in China. And if it's not in China, move it to India. Yeah. But to be able to rethink product at a design level, when we start seeing and understanding where these technologies are playing with 3D printing, I think designers will be at the forefront of innovation, and we should really be thinking about it not only from a perspective of building product, but have the sustainability footprint built within that actual product itself. Even potentially change the way we label things. That labeling shouldn't just be looking at, don't dry clean this shirt and don't wash in, hot water, but actually there is another life to that T-shirt.
Right.
Let's think about what that next life is.
Yeah, fantastic. And just one last question. You mentioned...
Mate, you're trying to sneak it in here,
I know.
They're going to come at us from all sides.
Entrepreneurial purpose and the idea of social entrepreneurship. Can you talk to us about that and your view on that?
Triple bottom line.
Right.
And I think it's got to come from the investment community to accept that this is actually a very real financial construct.
Yeah.
And it's very clear that financial markets are really thinking about, green and impact investing is a really important part of the future. But the acceptance from an investor, a VC community, that triple bottom line is something that should really be read and should be invested in is really an important next step there. Yeah. And there's often a separation between sort of social entrepreneurship, doing good while doing well, but actually forgive that from a profit perspective is not necessarily the truth.
Yeah. Leanne, they're giving them wind up.
Oh, mate,
Go.
they're tough. They're really tough.
Thank you very much for talking with us.
Good to see you.
Cheers.
Bye.